In this video, I will walk you through a color wheel exercise. This exercise is part of my Visual Art Fundamentals series. If you'd like to see more tutorials like this, feel free to subscribe and follow along. The goal of this exercise is to understand the capabilities and limits of the pigments you have. People tend to think that more is more when it comes to paint colors, but you can actually achieve a lot with a few colors. And using less colors when it comes to painting can actually create a more cohesive piece of artwork in the end. For this exercise, you'll need paper, paint, I'm using gouache in this video, and of those paint colors you'll need black, white, and three primary colors, so red, yellow, and blue. You'll also need general painting supplies like a cup of water, palette, and brushes, as well as a color wheel template, and I'll link this in the description of the video. For this video, you can ignore the reference photo on the left. Originally, this video was going to walk through two different exercises, color wheels and limited palette studies, but for the sake of time, I decided to split it into two separate videos instead. Alright, let's get started. To start, you will transfer your color wheel onto a piece of painting paper. There are multiple ways to do this. You could trace it if you have a window or a light table. You could print it directly onto a thicker cardstock paper, or you could do what I'm doing, which is to use transfer paper to trace the printed color wheel onto the paper I want to paint on. I'll include details about the type of transfer paper I'm using in the description of this video, but I like to use transfer paper because it can be used with toned paper, which, unlike plain white paper, is impossible to trace onto using a light table or window as a backlight. Once you have the color wheel template traced onto your paper, you can get your paint ready. Again, you'll need three primary colors, so red, yellow, and blue, as well as black and white. If you are an intermediate painter and you do not want to use black from a tube, consider removing black from your palette altogether, and before starting this exercise, attempt to mix your own black using only the three primary colors you've selected to use. Using black from a tube can dull your colors, but for beginner artists, I would still recommend using black from the tube to maximize what you're learning from this exercise. To start painting, pick one of the boxes in the middle ring and paint it with your red paint. Do not mix your red paint with anything else yet. You'll then do the same with yellow and blue, but make sure you leave space between each primary color so that future mixes will fit. With the template I'm using for this video, there needs to be 3 blank boxes between each primary color for everything to fit. Now that all 3 primary colors are in the wheel, we are going to move on to tinting and shading. To tint a color means to add white to it. To shade a color means to add black to it. Another term, which we won't demo in this video, is called toning. To tone a color means to add gray, or both black and white, to a color. To add tone and tint to your color wheel, start with the primary red. Mix some red and white and add it to the outer ring. Make sure you clean off your brush before mixing again. Then mix the primary red with black and apply it to the inner ring. You'll follow the same steps for yellow and blue. Once all 3 primary colors have both tints and shades, we are going to move on to mixing secondary colors, starting with red and yellow. Mix some red paint and some yellow paint together and try to achieve an orange that is somewhere between the two. Depending on the pigments you are using, the ratio of red to yellow paint may be different. Some reds are very strong and you may only need a touch of red mixed in to get to an orange. Other reds are weaker and you may need to mix a bit more in. This concept is the same for any pigment. Some can very quickly overpower other colors you are mixing with. Once you have a middle orange shade, you will still use red and yellow to make a mixture that leans slightly more red and then one that leans slightly more yellow. You will apply each of these colors to the color wheel in between red and yellow. Then, you will mix and apply the tinted and shaded versions of each of these colors, so make sure that you mix enough to begin with so that you don't have to try remixing and color matching later. For the rest of this exercise, repeat the same steps for the colors between yellow and blue, as well as blue and red. When you are all done, you will have a color wheel that shows you both the range and limitations of the pigments you are working with. You can complete this exercise with different primary colors too. In this video, I chose primary colors that were very basic, but you could choose a blue that is more teal or a red that leans a little bit more orange. If you want to challenge yourself, you can push this exercise even further and switch out one of the primary colors altogether. Maybe use a violet instead of a blue, or an orange instead of a red. Thanks again for watching. If you don't want to miss out on future tutorials, consider subscribing because I'll be posting more exercises in the future. If you're looking for where to go from here, I'd recommend taking a look at the Limited Palette Studies video on my channel, where I show a walkthrough of creating a sketch using the same colors as this color wheel, as well as a primary color palette that is less saturated. See you in the next video.